What up, y'all? We got some new Diddy news to get into. One of the Jane Does who filed a lawsuit way back in December of last year, the judge has ordered that she now has to reveal her identity. She originally wanted to stay anonymous. She didn't want to come out to the public, but the judge said, hey, you got to let everybody know who you are. Now, she has one of the more disturbing, gruesome, horrific lawsuits out of all of them that Diddy has.
Listen, I'm trying to grow my legal page here where I cover all types of cases, so please subscribe if you like these type of videos.
Here's a statement she released today. I had hoped to use a pseudonym in pursuing justice for what happened to me as a teenager. Defendants demanded that I use my name. Was an attempt to intimidate me, but I am not intimidated. I'm prepared to proceed and hold accountable those who have harmed me. So she was the fourth person to file a lawsuit against Diddy. And what's so interesting about her case compared to all the hundreds of other people who filed this lawsuit is she's the only one who's being represented by the same firm who did Cassie's lawsuit. So immediately you feel like, hey, this one might have some credibility there because that law firm, they're not taking all these other little random cases. They've only represented Cassandra Ventura and now Anna Kane. I covered this case last year back in December of 2023 when it originally dropped. Here's a clip.
All right, so let's get to number 4. Jane Doe, so she's going to be unnamed. She's alleging that she was a minor as well and that she was violated by Combs, Harve Pierre, and a third person all at the same time. All right, there's another minor involved. Well, she's not a minor now, but she's saying at the time she was underage when this happened.
All right, in this video, we'll summarize the lawsuit, talk about who Anna is. Also, we'll get into why she's in for a rude awakening with this lawsuit. And finally, we're actually going to dig back into the suit and look at it into way more detail. That's going to take a little bit longer, so I'll put that at the end of the video. But let's get into it. All right, so briefly, this is her lawsuit, just to paint the picture for you guys. She was 17 years old at the time. This happened in the Michigan area. She was at a lounge or a bar with some friends. She was approached by Harve Pierre, who used to be Diddy's right-hand man. He was also the CEO of Bad Boy. He was hitting on her. Hey, yo, I want to hang out. We can meet Diddy. You're so pretty, blah, 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 blah. So her and Harve, they're talking. He says, hey, come with me. They go to the bathroom, and he asks her to do some things to his banana, okay? I'm trying to keep it PG-13. He then tells her, come on, we're going to go meet Diddy. So she gets on a plane with them, flies from Michigan to New Jersey. They drive to New York. She meets Diddy at the studio. They're all hanging out. They start handing out party favors. She gets totally wasted, and Diddy, Harve, and a third executive take advantage of her completely. Then they put her on a plane and send her back home. That is the quick, easy version of this lawsuit, but it's way more detailed. I'll cover that at the end. All right, who is Anna Kane? This is where it gets interesting. She was married to a professional hockey player named Evander Kane. It seems as if their relationship was just doomed from the start. Very, very rocky. They married in 2018, had a daughter in 2019. The baby passes away. They have another daughter in 2020. They separate in 2020. She gets pregnant in 2021, aborts the baby, but she pretends to still be pregnant and did not tell her husband. I guess he found out, and then she later filed for divorce in 2021. These two had a nasty, nasty divorce, custody battle. Eventually, Anna lost custody of their daughter, and she could only have supervised visits. The courts felt like she was mentally unstable. She possibly had untreated mental health issues, and they were concerned about keeping the child around her. A lot of her issues stem from false accusations of her husband, accusing him of SA, DV. She posted on Instagram that he came to her house with a weapon when in reality it was an old picture that was a photo shoot that both of them took together. She said that he had severe gambling problems and he was betting on the NHL and throwing games, which led to an investigation at his job. The NHL did investigate him and they said he was innocent. They couldn't find out that he was betting on games, so she lied on her husband. Now, he doesn't have a squeaky clean past either. Another woman accused him of SA back in 2016. Her name was Rachel K. That same year, he got into legal trouble for allegedly grabbing a woman by the throat at the bar. He also grabbed another woman by the arms and pulled her out of the club. He surrendered, went to the police. From 2016 to 2018, he was dating another woman, made her get an abortion, got her pregnant again, and she said she didn't want to abort the baby, so he pressured her, promised her he he'd give her $2 million, but he only paid her like $125,000. So she sued him and won. He also had outside gambling issues. He owed a casino like $500,000. So he's not the poster child for upstanding men either. Now, when I'm looking at him, one accusation is cool, but when you start having multiple women with similar allegations, I'm side-eyeing you a little bit, brother. Now, he may be totally innocent, but it also seems like he used his money, NHL stardom, and power to help with a lot of these legal issues. So these two, they get together. It was never going to work by the time 2020 gets here, and they get married, and they seem to have a lot of issues going on in their relationship. This is probably why she wanted to remain a Jane Doe and did not want her identity out, because she has a checkered past. And Diddy's legal team is about to have a field day with it. They are about to Amber Heard her. She is about to get ran through the mill. It's already came out in federal paperwork that Diddy was instructing his sons to dig up dirt on victims, and this is the type of dirt that they're looking for, because when you sit a woman like this in court against a powerhouse like Diddy, she's going to look insane and she's going to look like a liar. But two things can be true. She may be a liar who fabricates a lot of things as an adult, but can you contribute these lies, outbursts, mental health issues back to this alleged assault that happened in 2003? Is there a through line from the Diddy incident going all the way to present day and her having severe mental health issues? I suspect that this law firm is going to lean all the way into this dirty laundry, and they're going to say, yes, our client has done some lying in her present relationship, and all of this is stemming back from 2003 when she was violated by 3 adult grown men. Woof, this is a lot. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this lawsuit. Remember, this was filed way back in December of 2023. The reason it's back in the headlines now is because she's been a Jane Doe for over a year. She was able to file in secret, and the judge was like, nah, you got to reveal yourself if we're going to proceed with this lawsuit. And here's the document. All right, let's get into the factual allegations. In 2003, Miss Doe was a 17-year-old 11th grader residing in the suburb of Detroit, Michigan. At the time, Mr. Combs was 34 years old, twice the age of Miss Doe, and one of the most well-known and influential music artists of all time. A decade earlier, Mr. Combs founded Bad Boy and installed his longtime friend, Mr. Pierre, into the role of president. At the time, Mr. Combs had many connections to Michigan, including, among others, to the Black Mafia family, BMF, a drug trafficking and money laundering organization that is rumored to have seeded Bad Boy. They done threw BMF in this. According and upon information and belief, Mr. Combs' associates, including Mr. Pierre and the third assailant, spent significant time in and around Detroit, Michigan. On one evening between the spring and fall of 2003, Ms. Doe was out with friends. It was not uncommon for her and friends to frequent bars and lounges in the Detroit area. Certain of Miss Doe's friends were well connected with people in the industry. On the evening in question, Miss Doe was with friends in a lounge when she was approached by who she later learned was Mr. Pierre. Mr. Pierre was with his own friends, including the third assailant. Mr. Pierre, the third assailant, and their friends were dressed in suits. Mr. Pierre repeatedly complimented Mrs. Doe's appearance, saying that she was hot, among other things. He then began talking about his self-described best friend and brother, Mr. Combs. Specifically, Mr. Pierre continually stated that Mr. Combs would love to meet Mrs. Doe. Mr. Pierre even called Mr. Combs and put Miss Doe on the line. Mr. Combs told Miss Doe that he would love to meet her and that she should accompany Mr. Pierre to New York City in a private jet. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Pierre directed Miss Doe to go with him into a bathroom at the lounge. Once inside the bathroom, Mr. Pierre began to smoke from what appeared to be an aluminum can. Wow. After he finished smoking, Mr. Pierre suddenly took out his banana and demanded that Miss Doe do things and forced Miss Doe's head down to perform. After assaulting Miss Doe, Mr. Pierre directed her to accompany him and the third assailant and the third member of their group to an airport in Pontiac, Michigan, where Signature, a fixed base operator, had a prepared private jet to take the 4 of them to New York. Upon information and belief, the private jet landed at an airport in New Jersey. Upon departing the jet, 2 black SUVs were waiting for the group. Ms. Doe got into the SUV with Mr. Pierre and the third assailant, and the other member of the group went into the second SUV. The SUVs brought the group to Daddy's House Recording Studio, and hangout owned and operated by Mr. Combs and Bad Boy. When Mrs. Doe arrived, she was escorted into the building where she remembers seeing a sign from the company Technicolor. Upon entering the studio, Ms. Doe encountered Mr. Combs. At the time she arrived, a female recording artist was using the studio as Mr. Combs and her parents watched on. She finished up shortly after Mrs. Doe arrived and left. While still in the studio section of Daddy's house, Mr. Combs asked Miss Doe to sit on his lap to take a picture. A copy of the photograph is below. Mr. Combs, Mr. Pierre, and the third assailant began to supply Miss Doe, a 17-year-old child at the time, with copious amount of party favors. While the evening became a blur, Miss Doe does recall Mr. Combs, Mr. Pierre, and the third assailant consistently hitting on her, telling her how hot and sexy she was. Various other pictures were taken in the studio that night, leaving no doubt that Miss Doe was in Mr. Combs' New York City studio with Mr. Combs on the night that she was assaulted. As the night went on, the 17-year-old became more and more inebriated, eventually to the point where she could not have possibly consented to being intimate with anyone, much less someone twice her age. Nevertheless, that evening, Mr. Combs directed Miss Doe to accompany him to the bathroom. Once there, Mr. Combs began to engage with her intimately. Mrs. Doe did not consent to this procedure with Mr. Combs, but he continued anyway. At some point, he did turn her around and told her that he could not complete what he was doing unless she rubbed on his chest. He then turned her back around and continued to do what he was doing. By this point, Mrs. Doe was coming in and out of consciousness because of the drugs and alcohol that she had been given. Her next memory was looking up into the mirror above the sink to find a third assailant had now replaced Mr. Combs, and he was being intimate with her. Mr. Combs was also sitting in the bathroom and watching the third assailant be intimate with Mrs. Doe. At this point, Mrs. Doe built up enough energy and told the third assailant to stop. She did not want to continue doing this. The third assailant did not stop. After the third assailant was done, Mr. Pierre then got behind her and started to have non-consensual intimacy with her as well. When Mr. Pierre was finished, he left Mrs. Doe in the bathroom all alone. She fell into the fetal position and she was in excruciating pain. After she eventually mustered up enough energy, she was able to walk out of the building. They put her in a car, took her back to the airport, and flew her back to Michigan. However, she does not recall how she got home or got into her car, and her underclothing was missing. As a result of this situation, Mrs. Doe has suffered significant emotional distress and feels shame that has plagued her life and personal relationships for 20 years. Mrs. Doe knew that speaking out against these defendants would be extremely difficult and that she would likely be subject to retaliation and defamatory slurs and attacks. However, in 2023, when Ms. Doe read about a lawsuit from Cassie Ventura, she later began to understand that Mrs. Ventura was trafficked and forced against her will to do things that she did not want to engage in, and it triggered her and brought back memories to what happened to her. After Cassie Ventura filed her suit, Ms. Doe then found out that 2 other people filed suits against Sean Combs, and when she saw the bravery of these other women, she decided to file her suit as well, and she's ready to tell her story. All right, y'all, that's all we have on the case surrounding Anna Kane. Do y'all believe everything that she stated? Leave your comments below. Thanks for hanging out with me. Peace.